I'm a big fan of the Reedsy writing app, but there are a few things that are good and bad when using it. So I'm Mike with WriterSanctuary, and today we're going to go over 14 pros and cons of using the Reedsy writing app. Okay, so first of all, writing with Reedsy is absolutely free. In fact, I only use my Google account to log in. You can use Facebook if you'd like, but once you create an account, you can get started, create your book, and go. There's no subscription fee, no upfront fees, and for being a free app, it has quite a few tools to it. Now, you don't necessarily need to use Reedsy's other services, like they have access to editors and graphic designers and whatnots for your book cover. You don't have to use any of that. Write your book, export it as an EPUB, and then upload it to Amazon. And all of it without costing you a single dime. Another pro for Reedsy is that it's extremely easy to use. It has a bit of a minimalist appearance where all you have available for your manuscript is just your chapters on one side, your tools on the other, and then you can just start writing as you go. And the tools that are in it are self-explanatory, like all you gotta do is hover over them, and you've got your goals and insights, pinned notes, track changes and comments. It tells you exactly what each tool down the list does. So a lot of them are self-explanatory, so you don't have to worry too much about thinking about it. Another aspect that I like about Reedsy is how it formats as you write. So when you're writing your content, or your manuscript, as soon as you hit the enter button and start writing another piece of text, it'll indent it just fine. This means you can separate paragraphs correctly, add your conversations that are indented, you can do scene separations, so you can kind of see what it looks like in real time as you go, something that Atticus doesn't do. Like with Atticus, it just does a wraparound text, so you have to cross your fingers and hope that you remember to put certain paragraphs where they need to be. However, Atticus does format correctly once you get to that point and get ready to export. Reedsy does it automatically. Another pro for Reedsy's writing app is the planning board. I love this thing. They just recently added it at the very beginning of 2023, and you can go in and plan all kinds of stuff. Now, this is the default look of the planning board from Reedsy, and you can see how an example of how it's all set up. You can make changes to it. You can add new folders and blank notes if you like. So, like if we wanted to do a new edition, blah, blah, blah. And then we can pin it at the top right here. And if we pin that note, it then gets pinned to the manuscript as we write, which is kind of handy, especially if you want to use something like it to keep track of your notes as you're writing a manuscript. Now, the planning board I use in my newest book helps me plan out the outline of the book. I can store all the characters that are in it, the different cities, settings, items, whatnots, things that are pertinent to the plot. I do have in the planning board. And for stuff that I need, I'll pin it so that I remember to add those elements to my book. So it's not necessarily a split screen view because you can only pin one thing at a time, but it is a step in the right direction, I guess. Another aspect that I love about Reedsy is setting goals. I'm a big fan of goals, and being able to keep track of my self-imposed deadlines can help me keep motivated. Now, in order to do that, we're just going to close the pinned note here. We're going to open up goals and insights, and then we can set all the goals we want for this book. Now, this one has already been published. I'm just using it as an example. I haven't written anything in it, but when you start writing, it'll show your word count and then your added and removed word count. So this is your net. This is what you actually did. And then you can set your deadline. You can add more writing goals if you'd like. You can say that I want to write 1,000 words before the end of the week. Then we just hit create goal. There we go. We have to write 200 words per day to finish on time, which I'm not going to worry about because, like I said, this book is published. So I'm going to delete that goal. But in any case, I do like being able to set up goals. It keeps me motivated, keeps me focused on finishing the book on time. I used it for when I wrote the first draft to Kingmaker, and I was able to write it like 2.5 weeks before my deadline. Something else that is quite beneficial for Reedsy is being able to track your comments and changes. So, like say I wanted to change this piece of text here, I can highlight it, click on the comment, and then create a comment of need more oomph. Then hit comment. That way I remind myself now when I'm done with the first draft that I need to go back and check out the comments that I left behind so that I can make changes accordingly. And once we're done with that, we just hit resolve and it goes away. Now, I've done a lot of comments for Kingmaker. In fact, I'm only chapter 3 into Fury, and I've done a lot of comments to remind myself that there's certain elements I want to change, certain pieces I want of text to be further on, different changes to the different items and elements. I mean, I leave notes for myself a lot, and I find it an incredibly useful tool. Now, something else about Reedsy's writing app is that it is web-based, so it's online and saves to the cloud. Now, I know a lot of authors don't really like that aspect, but because it is web-based, it'll work with all the tools that you have installed in your web browser. In my case, I have the Grammarly Chrome extension, so I can scan through the text as I write, and it helps me straighten up my grammar. Now, Reedsy does have a built-in spell check, and so I kind of use both the spell check and Grammarly at the same time. Grammarly will automatically fix whatever you write as you're writing it, as long as it can identify the word you're using. And something else about the Grammarly Chrome extension in Reedsy is like, if you're looking for a synonym of a certain word, all you gotta do is double click it, and Grammarly will pop up a list of different alternatives for it. So, like if I wanted to find a different word for administrators, if I just double click it, then I have synonyms available from Grammarly, so I can change it to managers, executives, officials. It's not a complete list of synonyms. You'll find more if you do a Google search, but if you just need something basic and quick, just double click it and you're good to go. Not to mention that you're able to use the dark mode extension in Chrome to turn Reedsy into dark mode, which is quite useful if you're like me and write quite a bit during the night. The point being is that any extension that you have installed in your web browser will work with Reedsy. Another pro for Reedsy is that it comes with a variety of formatting tools as you write. Now, it's a little bit different than what I mentioned before, where it will format everything correctly as you're typing it out. It also provides you some tools. So we kind of looked over those a second ago, but if you highlight anything here, Reedsy will automatically pull up the list. And unfortunately, I got Grammarly popping up over some of it. But you've got everything you possibly need to write just about anything you could think of. And this includes, you can add links to stuff, you can add images that you'd like, you can do a quote, block quote. Oh crap. There we go. That's a good thing, this book's already published. But you can add a whole variety of different things, like this one's paragraph and headers that you can't see under Grammarly. Sometimes it opens up underneath, and sometimes it doesn't. If you do it fast enough. Whoop, damn it. God. Sometimes Grammarly can be a pain in the butt. There we go. So you have the paragraph, you got the headers, your alignment, you can do lists, items, bold, italicized, underline, strike throughs. I can link the entire thing if I put in the URL of something, like I send everybody to Google. Cancel? Link. Cancel. There we go. So you can pretty much write anything you want in Reedsy, perfect for ebooks or for print. You probably wouldn't use like links in print, but for the ebook, they're there. And lastly, a feature I use quite a bit is being able to share my book to my beta readers. And to do that, we just go to the share function here, and then I can create a whole new link. I can give an expiration date, so if I wanted this to expire on the 14th, and then I can give people access to the entire book, or I can select specific chapters. If we do the whole book, we can just hit create link, and now I share that link with all the beta readers, and they can get a read-only copy that's on their browser so they can read through the book. And once that expiration date comes across, nobody can access it anymore. Now remember, this is a read-only, so you can't share it with an editor and expect them to leave notes or make changes for you. For me, I just use it to share the book with the beta readers so they get an idea of what's coming up, and then they email me things they liked about the book and what they would change and whatnot. But if you want to delete the link sooner than that, then we just hit the 3 dots here and remove or revoke. There we go. Or we can hit remove altogether. Ta-da! Okay, so let's go over a few of the bad sides to Reedsy. But first of all, there's no outside collaboration. The only way anybody can help you edit a book or make comments is if you hire Reedsy's editors, and they can have access to your book that way. However, you can always export the book as a backup, and you can save it as a docx file, which other people can change and then email back to you. It's a little bit more convoluted, and it requires sending a file back and forth and then copying and pasting it back into your book, but it'll work. But if you're used to using Google Docs and having real-time collaboration and changes and edits and comments, you're not going to get that with Reedsy, unfortunately. Something else that's lacking in Reedsy is that you don't have a lot of formatting options. Now, when you format your book at the end, when you're ready to publish it, you only get 3 options for fonts and the way it looks when you download it, which is kind of a bummer because it eliminates a little bit of the flair that you might want to add to your book. Unlike Atticus, that has like 3 pages worth of different types of formats, or you can create your own, which is quite extensive as to what you can do in it. Now, if Reedsy has something similar, that would just be awesome, but it doesn't. You only get 3 different types of formatting, and then you export your book. However, they do say that there are more templates on the way, but I've been using it for 2 years and they still haven't added anything to it. Another downside to Reedsy is that you're limited on export options. You can either export in EPUB, MOBI, or PDF file formats, which most online ebook places accept anyway. So that's not necessarily a bad drawback. Atticus only has 3 that it exports in. Scrivener, on the other hand, can export just about anything you can possibly think of. Like I said, this isn't necessarily a deal breaker, mostly because ebook platforms like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, they all accept EPUBs. And then you have the print format, PDF, just about everybody accepts that. So no matter what kind of book that you're trying to write, you can export it in something that everybody uses. Another downside that might not necessarily be a downside for you is that it is only cloud storage. Now, one of the big reasons why I like Scrivener so much is because it's an actual installable program on your computer, and it saves all of my books directly on my machine. I don't have to worry about connecting to the cloud, which does have a bit of a drawback, especially if you're on a computer that's not your primary computer. And some people like being able to save to the cloud, that way they have access to their book at all times, but I would prefer having an app installed on my computer. I guess I'm just old-fashioned that way. Now lastly, probably one of the biggest downsides for Reedsy, for me anyway, is that it doesn't have a split screen view. Now sure, you can pin your OneNote to your manuscript as you're writing it, but I really like the format of Scrivener where I can select what I want to appear in that second screen. Like in Scrivener, I've got the 2 different panels here that I can resize any way I want, and then for the second panel, I can choose any number of elements that I want to keep track of. Like in this case, I have the places that I'm writing about available so that I remember what I'm writing about. And when you have a memory as bad as mine, that's a benefit. Now sure, Reedsy does have the OneNote that you can pin, and you can kind of make do with that because you can edit it as you're writing. But I really like the ability to shift back and forth with all the different research that I have quite easily. And with Scrivener, everything's laid out in a full list, well as in Reedsy, you have to go back to your planning board, select the file that you want to pin or the different pieces of research that you want to view, and it's just an extra step. Everything is still there. It's easy to access, but it takes a little bit longer than if you were to use something like Scrivener. So would I suggest using Reedsy as a beginning author? Absolutely. Despite the few negatives that it has, Reedsy is quite a useful tool, and I've written the first 2 books of my series on it without problem. It's a decent writing app, especially if you don't have the money to buy something like Scrivener or the $147 it'll cost you to fork out for Atticus. And remember that when you're writing a book in Reedsy, you do not have to use their services. You can export your book at any time in those formats, and you can either upload them to another writing app or to the publisher of your choice. So technically, you can export as EPUB, MOBI, PDFs, and DocX because the backup file for Reedsy is a DocX file. Think of the Reedsy writing app as kind of like a beginner's app. Because once you start publishing more books, you might want to do something a little bit more extravagant with them, which is where you'd use something like Scrivener or Atticus. Like, I love Atticus's abilities to format your book in a variety of ways, and there's a lot of interesting ideas in it. But when you don't have the money, Reedsy is definitely one of the best ones to use. After all, it is one of my favorite writing apps for a reason. I really enjoy using Reedsy. So what's your favorite writing app so far? Personally, I'm torn. I love Reedsy, Scrivener, and Atticus, so it's really hard to say just which one is my all-time favorite. I probably won't know that until I write a few more books, because I plan on using each platform to write at least one book. Like right now, I'm using Reedsy to write Kingmaker and Fury, and I have Atticus for the story that I have on Inkit, and I'm using Scrivener to write the Despair episodes on YouTube and Wattpad. And so far, using all three tools has been interesting. All of them have some great functionality for what they are, and it's really hard to say which one I like most. Anywho, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. For more videos about self-publishing, freelance writing, blogging, or anything else I cover, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. YouTube likes to hide my videos in the algorithm. I think it's going to do it for me today. I'll see you next time.